There's a frightening situation as it concerns the involvement of people in agriculture, not just in Nigeria, but in the world at large, because this is seen from the perspective that many persons over and over and over and again have been sold the idea of a theoretical form of knowledge, a kind of knowledge that grants you access and gives you the privilege, so to put it, of answering questions and getting to know things from a theoretical standpoint or from the lab, as opposed to like really getting to do things, really getting to feel things with your hands, really getting to come to understand how things ordinarily get to work. And with a thing like agriculture and its importance in our world and how far-reaching it can ordinarily go, because with the promise it has always made, the promise of keeping life on earth and nutrition possible, we come to see that with the current involvement of a few persons or a few organizations as it concerns what goes on in and about that particular sphere of life, we will come to a particular point, if we have not already come to that particular point, whereby we tell ourselves that we are at the mercy of a very few individuals in the world. We are at the mercy of a small crop of people who ordinarily have made it their duty to see to it that they go about the business of agriculture. Because tell me why in the 21st century, at a time where we eat more than ever before, at the time where we've had an abundance of varieties of food and different ways of getting to process food and process what we ordinarily consume, tell me why fewer and fewer persons are ordinarily looking the way of agriculture. The answers aren't far-fetched. The answers are with us. They are things we know. They are things we cannot lay claims of not knowing. That we've been able to convince ourselves, and we've bought the idea that we as a people ordinarily don't need to really get involved with our hands. We as a people ordinarily don't need to be all dirty and shitty and messy just to ordinarily live life, because there have been different forms and different means of ordinarily coming to terms with money. But as the world goes this way, we know what monopoly gets to do, and we know what happens when we leave as essential to us as agriculture, as nutrition, as our survival down here to the hands of a very few persons. We become their slave. We become so used to them that we ordinarily would not live or have a say on many fronts, rather than pay obeisance to these people and then just endure their manipulation or endure the monopoly that comes with whatsoever that happens. And tyranny is not always far from it. Shifting a bit back to a place like Nigeria, shifting a bit back to a place I am very well familiar with, a land blessed beyond human comprehension. Good weather, it rains. When it rains, the sun comes out virtually every day. It's like divided up between two seasons with sub-seasons, or let me not call it sub-seasons, with variations in between, but two seasons nonetheless. And you ask yourself why are people blessed so much cannot ordinarily transform what is in the land and what is in their head, or what's supposed to be in their head, to results people ordinarily should benefit, to results ordinarily people should be really looking at. If you've traveled from a place like Ibadan through Shagamu down to Ibejuleki up to Ekpe, and then you find yourself on the other part and you see yourself in Lagos, from Ajah up into wherever you tend to find yourself within the mainland or the island, you come to see that you see lush vegetation from the very beginning of Ibadan down into down through the Cocoa Institute up onto Shagamu, up onto Ijebu there, and into the different villages and into the different cities and towns that make up that particular region. And you get to see the land that ordinarily goes unattended, that goes year in, year out without being used. That, what I mean without being used here, I don't mean it's not really being used, but have the science of such a place really been learned and understood, to really come to understand why such a place is the way it is and what ordinarily can be done there? Or you want to look at a place like the Obudu mountainous areas, and you look at the science that can ordinarily be applied in such a lush vegetation and greenery, and you ask yourself, What have we done and what have we not done, and what are we ordinarily waiting for, and what are we really waiting for? You want to go down the Niger Delta and you see the magic of fishery that can ordinarily come out from there, rather than the local way it's done at the moment, and the pollution of the waters by Shell and a whole lot of other companies that get to do oil exploitation and oil drilling, both offshore and what have you. Or you want to go to the south, you want to go to a place like Buki, a place that houses the national park, from Danare to Butantong to Bashwa, you name it. There's a whole lot of magic that ordinarily can come out of a place such as that. But what do? We tend to tell ourselves that we need money. We need money. The average Nigerian thinks about money. Money. Well, what happens when you get the money? The idea of getting money is ordinarily to still fall back to the basic things in life. Get a house, if you want, start a family, raise a family, get married, fall in love, give back to the community. All revolves around the fact that with the amount of money you get, you still fall back to the very basic things. Things like going to toilet and coming out of toilet and then eating and going back to toilet again and then pissing out and then shitting out and then taking stuff in. And we call that pleasure. We call that merriment. We call that a whole lot of things, as though that is in and about what they are than the real stuff they're ordinarily supposed to be. Survival, nutrition, good health. You go to a place like Nsukka, from Enugu up to Nsukka, from when I mean Enugu now, I mean Enugu as the capital city, through to Nsukka, down there going into Lokoja, and you explore Kogi. Forget about the bad road for now. Just imagine the vast expanse of land I'm talking about. You go through that way, and you are finding yourself in Abuja, and you find yourself in Kubwa, and you pick you get a train ticket from Kubwa, and then you find yourself in the north in the same day, or probably the next day. And you see the magic of the lush vegetations and the different types of soils and the different soil profiles we have across the country. And you tell me why we ordinarily are still clamoring for food, are still crying for our basic necessities, because it doesn't really make sense that we in the 21st century should be complaining of food. We have all it takes, save for the implementation of the sciences we ordinarily have either forgotten or have refused to learn, and the dedication and the realization that going to farm is not a thing left for the poor man. Going to farm is not a sign of poverty. Going to a farm is not a sign of suffering. Owning a farm and actually cultivating stuff with our hands is not indeed a thing that should be left to a few people. It's a thing that everybody should come to emulate. It's a thing that everybody should come to appreciate to a great extent. It's a thing that should be held with pride, and people should be very happy doing such, because tell me why anybody would ordinarily want to be angry at the fact that at their situation and their status as farmers. Because you drive the economy, you keep the world going. Is there any other thing that have been done on earth that have not really one way or the other come from the land? I don't see. If you've seen something, please let me know. I haven't seen when we as a people have ordinarily used this space down here without one way or the other making a direction towards the land. If your idea is to fly so you can land somewhere. If your idea is to build a house or to live on the 9th floor, on the 108th floor of a skyscraper, it is because it lands on the ground. One way or the other, it comes down the hot balloon. When you must have gone through different expeditions and seen different horizons, you ordinarily want to come down. Just like the Wizard of Oz, you find yourself hovering down there, but probably you will still come down nonetheless. You will still have the need to really come down to earth. You want to talk about the levels at which people have had their priorities set wrong in a place like Nigeria, in Africa, and by extension the world. And you just think about the number of persons who indeed engage critically in agriculture. What have we done? What have we been told? What are the lies they have told us about agriculture? What are the things we ordinarily have listened over and over and over again, to the extent now we now believe the lies we now believe as truth? The lies we have believed are enormous. They are many. One of them is the case that farming is a thing for the poor. Farming is backbreaking. Farming is a thing that you ordinarily shouldn't do. Everybody should go after the money. And so you see families divided and parents and children getting to migrate and almost not having any chance to get to see themselves for as long as possible because they are chasing the bag, because they are chasing money, because they are chasing things ordinarily that in the long run, after they look back and look at the cost. And the cost, most of the time, seem to be greater than the value gotten from a whole lot of pursuits down our world. Am I saying people shouldn't chase after money? No. I'm just saying not everybody should be sold the idea that everybody should be chasing after the money. Not everybody should be sold the idea of all starting a business, all becoming entrepreneurs, all becoming business owners as such. Because if we go about that particular way of reasoning, we come back to the very beginning that everybody will become a master or will become a boss of something, and something else will still be lacking one way or the other. And what would that be? It will be the case that we indeed ordinarily will be in need. What would we be in need of? We'll be in need of each other. We'll be in need of the same things we ordinarily tried running from. Because if everybody goes into finance, who will do the cleaning? Who will do the food supply? Who will do the things we ordinarily have refused to tell ourselves that are indeed necessary? The next lie we've also been sold is the fact that we've been told to forget that we all eat. We have been told to go to shopping malls and get to see things that don't look like things that come from the farm. You go to a supermarket or you go to a mall and you see milk, not milk coming from a cow now or from livestock, maybe from other stuff. Or let's just assume you just see milk generally, but you don't see milk in that particular form. You don't see milk as coming out of the breast of an animal or being gotten from certain plants. You see something packaged. You see something in a container, and it doesn't look like something that comes from the farm. And your consciousness, it doesn't allow you the chance, because of how it has been fed and educated, to really ask yourself, where is this coming from? The same way you don't look at something like a book and tell yourself, this thing indeed comes from trees. This thing indeed comes from trees cut down, or trees going through different processes, trees going into different shapes and realities and coming out the way they come out. You don't see trees when you hold this book. You don't see it. But it's reality. You don't even look at the coloration down here as a thing that ordinarily came from different pigments. You just look at it as a finished product. When you look at tissues frequently get to use, or we look at serviettes, you get to see that we don't really look at their primary source. We don't even know most of the times where they come from. You look at cornflakes, you know there's a corn there, but you don't really know which particular corn it's coming from or how it's been processed and how it came to be the way it is. When you look at the oat, you don't really know where it's coming from. You hear cocoa oat and you're like, where is that supposed to be coming from? Their realities and their existence and what they ordinarily have been and how they have ordinarily been gets to elude us, and we increasingly become unconscious as to the fact that in and about these stuffs are things and products of agriculture, are things and products of human hands, are things and products of our day-to-day existence, and they come from opening the ground and putting stuff there, or bypassing the stuff we need on the ground, and probably we forget a lot of things too soon, and sooner or later this becomes a reality. We don't know where things are made from. We don't know how things are gotten. And so life goes on. Life goes on as though it never even started in the first place, and we continue like this. We continue down this path, and we don't see the fact that we ordinarily shouldn't go this way, and this is not the right way to go. That is one of the myths we've been sold. The myth that things ordinarily don't come from the farm. Things we eat ordinarily don't come from the farm. And rightly so. Not everything even we get to eat can be really said to come from the farm. Many of them come from the lab, like the eggs we get to eat eggs we get to buy from our shopping malls in recent times, being produced in the lab and given expiration dates, or the mushrooms we get to we get to buy and we don't even really know where they come from. It's a kind of scary too that most of the things we even get to eat nowadays are things we ordinarily, one way or the other, don't really even come to understand or would never ever really come to trust. But that's a conversation for another day. The conversation down here is very simple. We should be as responsible as possible. We should be co-creators in the affairs of what indeed becomes the world. We should come to terms with the fact that we as humans at the moment need one another, and we can only make sense of existence down here if we participate in the creation of things on earth. Because I would never come to understand why we ordinarily think we want to leave the bulk of responsibility to the minority of people who get to indulge themselves in these practices, as opposed to the fact that we all can, we one way or the other, at different degrees and for varying reasons, come to one way or the other. Look at agriculture. And here I'm not saying everybody should become farmers in the strict sense of the word, but I'm saying we should be attentive as to the things we ordinarily get to eat, to the things we ordinarily get to drink, and to the ways we ordinarily get to see life, and how we ordinarily come to understand life, and how we ordinarily should come to understand life. Because in the grand scheme of things, in the final analysis, what matters is how we get to use our lives down here. Whether you believe that existence precedes essence or you believe that essence precedes existence, it's a conversation up for debate and for you to one way or the other get to figure out. But at the moment, what matters is the fact that we are here. You are here, I am here, we are living. Our lives ordinarily matter. It matters how we get to also carry ourselves down here, and down from here into the future is the fact that we at the moment are. And for as long as we be, as long as I use the word be here in the philosophical sense and the theological sense, the idea of being, as long as we are, we must come to make sense of our stay down here and contribute also to the growth and development of things here into the future. One of those ways is by agriculture and its involvement, and how we ordinarily come to participate in the grand scheme of our survival down here, and we pushing forward. Our children have to be reoriented. Our children have to be given a new form of education. New philosophers have to step in the space that have long been abandoned and tell the people the importance of creation, and tell the people the importance of coming to terms with our life, and coming to terms with our reality, and coming to terms with the fact that things are not just manufactured from different places. They come almost in and about involvement with the human hands. They come in and about the fact that we get to participate in them, and we get to involve in their creation, and we get to see the magic that comes with that. It's a world that needs flourishing. It's a world that needs human involvement. That world is our world. It's a world we must willingly participate in if we ordinarily want to make sense of our life down here. We cannot just give ourselves to chance. Agriculture holds a key place and should be held as a serious priority for any country who wants to take themselves serious. And at the moment, we have food, right? But we have food that almost the rich alone can afford. We have food left for almost the rich and the rich alone. We have food that we cannot really tell ourselves that we have food that we cannot tell ourselves that we don't have. We have food, but they're so expensive, and they're expensive because the economy at the moment have made it so. They're expensive because very few persons get to ply that trade. They're expensive because the demand is indeed very high, and those who go about producing and those who are involved in production are quite few, and you expect that. And foods, if I should use that, are expensive because we all eat, right? We all drink, we all need food, and sometimes we don't see the need that we need food until we become hungry, until things go bad most of the times, until we become in need, which is a thing we do every day. You look around a space like Nigeria and you see the hunger in the land, and you are reminded of the song Christ, come quickly, there's danger on the door. Poverty aplenty has gone worried war. There's famine in the city and hunger on the plain. Come, Lord Jesus, the light is dying. The night keeps crying. Come, Lord Jesus. One demands aplenty in far too many lands. The sick go unattended, the deals a heavy hand. The dreams of men are empty, their cup of sorrow full. The world awaits in darkness, a mighty burst of light. To set the lame man walking, to give the blind man sight. Talk about liberty, talk about peace, talk about all the things we dream of. It's in and about what this song is about. You don't have to have Christian affiliations to really come to see, to eat that. Wants, demands down here, plenty. The sick are going unattended. Death continues to deal heavy hands and heavy blows to in and about everybody it gets to meet on its way, and it gets to meet on the road. Why is that so? It's so because as much as we ordinarily want to survive, scarcity comes in the land. And with scarcity comes bestiality. With scarcity comes selfishness. With scarcity, corruption kicks in. With that, you find poverty, and poverty robs a man of his or her dignity. It robs a man of what ordinarily should make a man a man. It robs a man of a man's real worth. It reduces the man to almost anything, and almost anything goes. I don't understand why people get to romanticize poverty. There's nothing appealing about being poor. There's nothing appealing. Not in the 21st century. It has never been. Poverty is only romantic, and it only meets the romanticism of novels and the likes of that. Violence also gets to appeal in the movies, or when it's not you. When you come so close, you get to understand that poverty doesn't appeal to anybody. Same as hunger. Nobody wants to be hungry. Nobody wants to be kept in a warring zone, and it only makes sense in books and in movies. It doesn't meet reality, is what I'm trying to say. In real life, people get very angry at bad things that happen to them. And they become disillusioned. And they become disillusional as it concerns how to go. And they become cynical as to existence. And they look at life from a very, very narrow perspective. And their life is just reduced to survival and survival alone. Poverty does more than we want to tell ourselves it does to us in the 21st century. We read about it in books, and you think it's all beautiful, the lives of people who suffered, and the lives of prisoners who were wrongly accused and who were sent to jail, and in the end they come out and it's all good and it's all fine and it's all glowing, and we're like, this is good. But it's not. It's only in the books. Mandela's 27 years and the different period in which he was haunted sounds heroic until you are Mandela, until you find yourself down there, and until you are Mandela, and you have to remind yourself that a thing like Invictus is a thing that ordinarily will keep you going, and you will shout almost in and about every time in your head, out of the night that covers me, dark as the pit from pool to pool, I thank whatsoever gods there may be for my unconquerable soul. You can only tell yourself that when you almost have nothing, and that is if you have an unconquerable soul. For in the first clutch of circumstance, will you wince? When they hit your head and your head is bloody, will it not go unbowed? Will you probably shake and still stand your ground? Will you even be able to have the strength to say, I am the master of my fate? I'm the captain of my own ship? Will you have that courage? Can you even say that when it comes to that, when it gets to that particular point where you have to tell yourself, I think I am the master of my fate. I think I'm the captain of my own ship? Because sometimes we tend to overlook poverty, and we tend to think it's just normal. Drive through Lagos, drive through Abuja, enter Maraba, and you get to see poverty porn being displayed. I call it poverty porn because that is what it is. It looks as though people just like watching and seeing poverty. Makoko, from drones and the different shoots people get to make up the sky, and from the third mainland bridge, you think the idea of a slum is a very, very wonderful thing, and the idea of living in a slum is beautiful until you are the one living in the slum, until you are the one expected to really come to make sense of your existence, and you come to understand that, nah, I don't think a place like Makoko is a place beautiful. Because the human lives down there are worth the time down there, but the conditions they find themselves are conditions we ordinarily would not would not ordinarily want to leave. So people go there to take pictures and do charity and then they leave. But it's in Lagos, the center of excellence, the center of commerce, the economic hub of Nigeria. Have you walked on the streets of Lagos? Have you decided to use the public transport in Lagos? Have you come out and get a bus from Aja, heading to Yaba, and see how long it takes you to get there and see how stressed you ordinarily can be? Have you entered VI and looked at the drainage system down there? Have you come out of there through phase 1, through phase 2, heading towards Mafuluku, and look at life on its own level? Have you been to Yanipaja? Have you really lived in Lagos? Can you really say a place like Lagos is the center of excellence? Can you really say the sufferings we get to do down there and the different stratifications people get to see and live by are things ordinarily they should be doing in the 21st century? No, I don't think so. I think scarcity robs us of our dignity and robs us of the chance we ordinarily can take to make sense of our life and can take to help ourselves. And so you see the wars we fight. The wars we fight are born out of greed, are born out of the fear of the unknown, are born out of the fact that we don't even believe that we as a people can ordinarily live and die without the fear of not having food to eat tomorrow, because we have not really even worked enough to merit that particular stuff. The idea that our lives can be much more better and we can ordinarily live in peace with one another across different boards and across different continents, because there's nothing that shows that we're ever ready to work on a global scale. And the direction the world is currently taking is very, very alarming, and it's very, very demanding, and it's going to be very, very disturbing and difficult to really live life in the future, because you might just end up getting all the money you want, but still you would not really be able to live life, and you will not even come to understand what that really even means. We started from just agriculture, doing things with our hands, and here we are talking about the effect of greed and the effect of scarcity. Because indeed these things are real and are things we ordinarily don't want to pay keen attention to. We don't really want to give the marginal attention to them, but they're as important as we don't want to admit. They're as important as we don't want to accept. And as we keep quiet, watching the way things get to go this way, the rich continue to amass things so that the president can ordinarily eat what he wants to eat. The senators and the politicians can ordinarily go to bed and feel safe and secure. And the poor man is just left to himself. The capitalist, the industrialist, one way or the other, can still have a way of manipulating the system and getting to high prices, and they claim that there is high demand, as such the price should ordinarily go up. And in all of this, there are no policies that regulate ordinarily how we go about life, what we should do, what we shouldn't do, what we should look at, what we shouldn't look at. And as the world goes, we go. As the world continues to push on, we push on with the world, and most of the time we just die, because from the lack of the use of our hands, we have created scarcity. And in we creating this form of privation, we have unleashed insecurity in our land. We've made ourselves targets for humans who ordinarily don't want to work, humans who ordinarily don't want to do what they're ordinarily supposed to do, and we've made ourselves available for them to do as they so please, for them to do what they think is important for them to do with us and about us and with our life, and so we go. So we go. And so we die. And so we die. And so we die. I am Biringkpa in Mecca, the mendicant. I am your brother. See you next time.